I know I'm a little late with my video on this film, but I have a couple pretty good reasons as to why. One, I wanted to at least get through opening weekend so I could more freely talk about spoilers, and two, this is currently my third draft of this script. My very first one ended up being a solid 13 pages. I felt that was way too long, and reading through it I found a lot that could be cut out. As for the second draft, I just wasn't happy with it, so here I am yet again, and hopefully the third time's the charm. Anyway, by now, you should all know what the basic premise of Spider-Man No Way Home is. Picking up quite literally moments after the post-credit scene of Far From Home, Peter's identity is now known to the entire world. He seeks out Doctor Strange to attempt and remedy his new situation. Clearly things don't go as they planned, hence the entire plot of this film. Now look, you all undoubtedly know by now just how much of a Spider-Man fan I am, and more specifically how much I adore the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I do enjoy aspects of the Andrew Garfield films, more so the first one, but so far, other than the majority of Homecoming and a very small amount of moments in Far From Home, the MCU's take on the character definitely has not been my favorite. Homecoming, for the most part, felt like a great way to reboot the character for new audiences who have been invested in the MCU since 2008. A small, contained story with Michael Keaton giving one of the best performances in all of the MCU as the Vulture. Far From Home, on the other hand, is, for the majority of the runtime, pretty unbearable to watch. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio is easily the standout of the entire film, and his illusion sequences are fantastic. Here we are now, though, at the end of 2021, and Spider-Man No Way Home has been out for a few days, and I won't lie, I went into this film with pretty low expectations. But thankfully, I loved almost everything they did. Don't get me wrong, I recognize that there are some flaws. The first 20 to 30 minutes or so leading up to the introduction of Doc Ock on the bridge is a little slow and all over the place. Hell, the majority of the first act can feel a little all over the place, but even so, I still enjoyed my time with that portion of the film much more than I ever expected to. Right away, you can tell that No Way Home is going to be a much darker, more emotional journey for the characters, but especially for Peter, and as strange as this might sound, that's really all I've wanted from this version of the character. Look back to Spider-Man 2 in 2004. Peter in Spider-Man just cannot catch a break throughout the entire film. He gets fired from his job delivering pizzas, his best friend is beginning to resent him, he can't afford to pay his rent, and he can't even simply make it to see the love of his life in her new play. Peter just keeps getting beat down in both aspects of his life, and to me anyway, that is at the core of the character of Spider-Man. Hell, even the Mark Webb films managed to portray this aspect of the character better than the MCU has so far. But No Way Home is finally giving us the real Spider-Man. No more of this Iron Man Jr. or Spider-Boy stuff. He is finally the full-fledged friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I will be the first one to admit that initially I was scared, worried, even nervous that including multiple villains from both the Raimi and Webb films would make No Way Home feel too crowded. I was nervous that the film would try too hard to coast on fans' nostalgia and rely too heavily on references and callbacks to the previous films rather than telling us a new Tom Holland Spider-Man story. Thankfully though, I was dead wrong. They managed to use all of the villains and other characters just about as well as they could, with the exception of a few. The fact that we have already seen these villains and their origins in those previous films definitely helps streamline their introduction into this new universe. Normally, I would focus a lot more on the overuse of badly timed comedy in Marvel films, and while there still is a few moments like that here, it is in no way as egregious as it has been in past MCU films. Instead, they chose to focus on a somewhat more grounded, close-to-home story, and I think it paid off in the end. Hats off, though, to Tom and Zendaya. They each gave one of their best performances, I think, of their entire careers. I've always thought that Tom Holland was a great actor, and he's always been really good with the material he was given, but that's just it. The writing or direction was never as strong as I would have wanted. The same thing could be said for Zendaya in her portrayal of MJ. She hasn't really felt like a real person. Thankfully, though, that could not be further from the case in No Way Home. Tom is able to give such an emotionally driven performance this time around, and that can be seen from the very beginning. As for MJ, she's fleshed out so much more in this one film than she ever was over the course of the last two. We learn a small bit more about her personal life, and while we don't get anything substantial, it's just nice to finally see her become the character I had always hoped she would be. And honestly, the same could be said for Andrew and Toby. While they don't have nearly the same amount of screen time or overall impact on the story of this film as someone like Doctor Strange or the Green Goblin, they do get plenty of moments of just a bit of added depth to their respective versions of the character. As a lifelong Raimi fanboy, the brief moment between Tobey and Otto near the end of the final battle is something I have always wanted to see. Andrew really did steal the show for me here. You can tell that he really does love this character, and you can see just the amount of respect he has for the material, so to finally see him have his time to shine and redeem himself by saving MJ is utterly incredible. You can feel all of the emotional weight just from Garfield's expression. It's a very brief moment, but the look on his face after successfully catching MJ tells you everything you need to know in that moment. John Watts and Marvel Studios really seem to understand the weight behind these previous versions of Spider-Man. They know how fans feel about those other films and just how much passion is there. Nothing shows this off more than the interactions between the three Spider-Men. Their dynamic together is nothing short of a dream come true for me. The scene in the science lab when Andrew and Tom are asking Tobey about his organic webs, to them just bonding on the scaffolding, asking about villains they've each fought, all the way down to Andrew Garfield cracking Tobey Maguire's back because he has back problems from the years of web swinging, all lend to the genuine personalities all these characters have. It's within these interactions between the three Spider-Men that a good amount of the comedy is thrown in, and like I said before, normally I would be very critical of Marvel forcing comedy into places where it doesn't belong, but I don't know, man, here it just worked for me. None of these moments overstay their welcome. They don't linger on it for too long, hoping to squeeze that one final laugh from the audience. They cut away when they need to, and they go right back to the emotional stakes of the story. On the topic of emotional stakes, the fact that they chose to make Aunt May this universe's Uncle Ben feels perfect, given that there has really never been a true mention of Ben in either of the films. That is, other than seeing his initials on Peter's suitcase in Far From Home. I feel that if they were to try and somehow force Ben into this film instead of having Aunt May give Peter the "with great power there must also come great responsibility" speech just moments before her death would have felt disingenuous. The way that they went about this crucial aspect of Peter Parker's origin, while not traditional, worked in just about every way for me. The way they chose to wrap things up in No Way Home is probably the best case scenario. Wiping everybody's mind of Peter Parker really makes this a bit of a soft reboot for the character going into the next trilogy. This keeps characters like Ned, MJ, and Happy around in the universe if they ever want to visit them again in the future, while also removing them, at least for now, from Peter's everyday life without killing them off. This really gives the filmmakers and writers the chance to do whatever they want with the future of this character. Peter now also has the freedom, as we saw in the final scene, to get his GED, go to college, and finally be out on his own. On the topic of that final scene, nothing made me happier than seeing Peter in his rundown apartment listening to a police scanner on his phone with a sewing machine on the table. He finally isn't able to rely on a dead billionaire's trust fund to get him through his life. Happy not knowing Peter anymore means he can't rely on Stark Tech to build his suits, but he has to get the materials for himself and make them from now on his own. By the way, he no doubt took inspiration from seeing Andrew and Tobey's suits when he was designing his new one. Really though, the ending of the film just left me hopeful. It left me hopeful for the future of Peter Parker in the MCU. It left me hopeful for the future villains that we might see. It left me hopeful that we will finally see a truly grounded Spider-Man story at some point in the future for the first time since, if I'm being honest, 2004. I know Tom Holland has said that with No Way Home finally being out, he wants to take a break from acting and focus on making a family, and I've even seen quotes from him saying that he doesn't know if he will play Spider-Man in the next film, but he'll be back, and I, for one, cannot wait to see where he goes next. I want to thank you all for watching this video. This movie was awesome. I loved Spider-Man No Way Home so much. I've seen it twice in theaters at the time of recording this, and I'm planning to go again at least 2 more times before it's out of its theatrical run. This is easily a day one purchase for me when it comes out on 4K Blu-ray. Easily a day one purchase. I love this movie so much. Right now, as it stands, it's my second favorite Spider-Man film of all time, behind only Spider-Man 2. I do want to do a ranking video of all the movies now that it's finally out. I did one a while ago, sometime just after Far From Home came out, but now with Venom 2, with No Way Home, I want to do an updated one. Yeah. Anyway, Again, thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought of this movie down below. I've seen a lot of praise for this film on Twitter and online in general. It's great to see. There are, of course, the few standouts that either thought it was just alright or thought it was worse somehow than the Amazing Spider-Man films, or worse than Homecoming and Far From Home, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But anyway, to each his own, I guess. As always, catch you guys in the next one.